So Eric Karros, former Dodger, goes on FS1 over the weekend and predicted that the Giants are going to trade for Shohei Ohtani. This is not about what he's going to do next year. Predicted that the Giants would trade for Shohei Ohtani, which, by the way, the other aspect of the conversation we haven't had yet, I firmly believe that they won't. This is not something that Farhan or the Giants, quite frankly, I think they're going to do. And if you really force me into a corner, I would still bet that the Angels don't deal him. And I'll tell you why on that in a little bit, even though they should. I doubt that they will, but we'll see. But Karros, following those comments, hops on with Evan and Kruger earlier today and expanded to say this.
If he goes to San Francisco, one, I think San Francisco is going to be in the hunt come the offseason. You get a hold of him now. You've got 2 months to basically wine and dine him and sell San Francisco, how great the organization is, living in the city, all that sort of stuff. I don't know that, at least historically, if you look what's happened with San Francisco the last few years, just trying to go out and win the market on the free agent sweepstakes has not gone well, right? It didn't work with Correa, did not work with Aaron Judge. And it always seems like that's the one piece that kind of just keeps the Giants, at least lately, from getting over the hump. Now, what are you going to give up? That's, you probably have to start with Kyle Harrison. That's number one. And then you've got, if I'm Farhan, I say here's my list of top 20. You tell me what you want. And whether Bailey's involved in that, Matos, Luciano, I mean, it's going to take a handful. And yes, it's a gamble. There's no question it's a gamble because you're giving up something and you don't even know if you're going to be able to sign him. But I believe you'll have a better chance of signing him before he goes to the market. If he goes to the market and he doesn't have any experience with San Francisco, I think it's going to be tough to sign him. I don't know that there's going to be many teams in that market. And, everybody kind of expects where he's going to go. So that's why. Who else really benefits both ways by getting them early? I don't know. And it would be great for San Francisco. Start putting people back in the seats. The team's a playoff team, but you add him, then it becomes much more than just a playoff team.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll say this. When he goes, hey, it's probably going to take you Kyle Harrison, I go, fine. And then he starts naming everybody else. Patrick Bailey? Have you not?
Don't want to lose Bailey. Yeah. I'd rather trade Harrison than Bailey.
Absolutely.
Bailey is now a proven commodity defensively.
At a catcher position.
Offensively, we don't know if he's going to be this good for his career. You hope so. But defensively, his ability to frame, block, and throw, he's already there. As a defensive catcher, he's the truth.
I mean, again, I just want to keep flashing for people. It's not that I play scared. You can't do that. You got to play big, and I understand. But just go through the process and realize they're going to ask for Harrison. They're going to ask for Bailey. They're going to ask for Matos, Luciano, and Wiz and Hunt, and probably another one. And even if you stopped and said, we're not doing 6, we're only doing 4 or 5 of those, and you give all of those up, and Shohei comes, and the Giants get into the playoffs, and they win a round or 2 or don't, it's like it would only feel good if they won it all. Anything short of that, and then he leaves, and you're sitting there with no catcher, you're sitting there with no starting pitcher to put next to Logan Webb in the near future. I mean, you sort of feel suddenly like you have no future. What the Giants have built in the farm system has taken all this time. 5 years of building blocks to put it in place where there are assets, there are actually players who are producing, they have injected life into this team, they have a good record, they're competing right now. You're going to give all of it up.
Not all of it.
You're going to give most of it up.
You're going to give up some of it.
For 10 weeks of a song and a prayer.
Right, as opposed to
it feels like
no
a bad
song
bet.
And no prayer.
Yeah, it feels like a bad bet.
It only feels like a bad bet if you think that you can get him on the open market. And I look at this front office and what they've done on the open market, and they haven't landed a big fish on the open market. So I'm looking at it in terms of you want Shohei Ohtani. I think every fan would say, yes, we want Shohei Ohtani. We would love to be able to go to him right now and whisper in his ear, and have Shohei say, yeah, don't trade anything for me. I'm coming, guys. I'm coming in December. I'm signing with the Giants. They're going to give me whatever I want, and I'm going to take it. I'm going to be a Giants come next year. Don't give up any prospect. That would be ideal, but that's not the way this works. And so, for me, the best way to show him what you have, I agree with Eric Karros in that bite you just played. You show him about your culture, your city, and your organization. And you know what? Maybe you make a little bit of a playoff run. You certainly would have to be a playoff team, and you'd have to go on some sort of a run. And maybe he gets the fever of what this Giants fan base can be when it's winning. And like you were there earlier this year, sold out crowds. Oh. The team was energized by the fans. The fans were all there. This fan base can be amazing.
I'm telling you, man. Even the way we're sitting here talking about it, the names that Karros just brought up. Now here's an even bigger disaster. How about this? The Giants, 52-41, second best record in baseball over the last 60 some odd games behind the Braves. You acquire Ohtani. Karros is saying you're giving up 3 people on your major league roster. So here comes Ohtani. Who's catching? Who's playing center field?
Well, you're not giving up Bailey.
You're not?
I don't think so. No.
I mean, they're going to ask.
Well, of course they're going to ask, but you give up Harrison. So, you give up Luciano.
I got less of a problem. I have a problem with it, but less of a problem if we're talking about River Cats. But if you get Ohtani and somehow in the process the team gets worse, you give up 3 major league rostered players. Ohtani comes in. Here come the fans. We're selling merch, but we're falling into third place. And you don't even go to the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Holy hell.
It's a risk.
A disaster.
It's a gamble. But I think
it's one I'm not willing to take.
It's one I'm willing to take because what we've seen in terms of prospects, and we can run down Harrison, Luciano, Whisenhunt. I'm looking at the MLB list. Grant McCray, Vaughn Brown, Reggie Crawford.
Yeah, I don't care about any of that stuff.
All I'm saying is we haven't seen any of these guys ever play at the major league level. So then we can talk about Christian Arroyo, and we can talk about all the other names in the past.
If you wanted to do 3 or 4 players and you start getting to number 11 and 13 on the list.
That would be Landon Roop.
Yeah, that absolutely.
I will not part with the Rooper.
Absolutely. But people right now, and maybe this is just bluster, but people right now are going, okay, look, we're going to do Bailey. You're doing Matos. You're doing Harrison. You're doing Whisenhunt. You're doing Luciano. Come on.
I'm doing
crying out loud.
Either Matos or Harrison. You're not getting both.
And what else?
Well, then you're going to get Luciano. I mean, fine. I think Marco Luciano is a guy who you'd rather trade him now than let him play another month because I think he's finding his level. And Kyle Harrison quietly has flattened out in Sacramento. The control hasn't been there.
You're talking about 3 starts, and you're also talking about someone who is still incredibly young.
21.
He's really young. Yeah, listen.
Does he have more value as a tradable piece, or does he have more value over the course of the next year and a half?
I mean,
that's a calculus you have. Like 3 years from now.
No way to know.
And I made the Zach Wheeler comp earlier, and Zach Wheeler was a young player when they traded him.
Yep.
And he went on to... He had some struggles in the bigs, and then he went on to be ace-ish, as I like to say. He's a borderline ace. And Kyle Harrison would trend to be the same kind of player. But if you could trade him for Ohtani and keep Ohtani,
it's just odd.
You would do that. It's a big if.
It's just odd because Farhan and all teams, quite frankly, have maintained one very clear thing, which is that you cannot sustain a winner in Major League Baseball if you do not have a homegrown core. It is the way financially, it is the way emotionally, it is the only way for a roster to really churn. And here we are with people lined up around the block to say for 10 weeks of Shohei Ohtani, you got to give up any hope of having a homegrown core while he's on the team. Like
I think that's too dramatic. If your farm system is as deep and as good as you say it is, and I don't know these guys from Jairo Pomares and Carson Seymour, and I'm not a Larry Krueger here. I'm not a Larry Krueger acolyte. I'm not going to go that deep. But if your farm is as good as you keep saying it is, then you can give up 4 or 5 pieces, maybe even 5 or 6, and still have a competitive farm.
But which 4 or 5? If you're giving up the top 4 or 5, it's not. I don't think it's fair to a team to say your farm system, if it's that good, should be able to withstand that. Nobody's farm system is in good shape if they give up their top 5 players down on the farm. That's a lot. It's not just who they we make the mistake, I feel, of going, well, what are they going to be? It's not just what they're going to be. It's the asset they are in any conversation that you may want to have.
Right.
The Giants have publicly stated we'd like a middle infielder who produces offensively. Well, too bad getting anybody to do anything anymore. You've given away all of your players in the farm.
You got Tyro Estrada. He's a middle infielder who can produce.
And he'll come back, and then, what about until then?
It's interesting you say that about the farm assets, because if you're not going to use these assets to make a big move, then you're just going to continue to Farhan Zaidi and backfill your 40-man and continue to shuffle out prospects.
No, it's not that at all. It's that those top 5 players, and I get, again, is Shohei different? Sure. But largely, the last 5 years, the idea of giving up top 5 prospects for rentals, 10-week rentals, GMs just won't do it anymore. Could this guy be enough to convince you otherwise? Sure. I'd give up one of them, and I'd give up, 4 prospects in the top 15, but I'm not giving up 1 through 5 and my catcher. I mean, Bowden today suggested that this is 7 to 10 players. You got to understand it from the Angels' perspective. We always only look at it from our perspective.
Right.
The Angels are giving away the only thing their fans show up to watch. They're not going to do it for some kid named Matos.
On the 17th of July. And as we get closer to the deadline, and the Angels continue to plummet back into Bolivia, as our famous friend Tony Bruno would say.
They're a mess.
Not oblivion, but Bolivia. Shout out the Bolivians. As the Angels continue to plummet, and they are facing the reality of what the future would hold. Let's say you get to August 1st, and you don't trade Shohei Ohtani. Well, he's leaving, guys. Artie, hey, Mr. Moreno. And I think that they do get a compensation pick of some variety. Woohoo! We get a pick.
That's
or
nothing.
You get 7 prospects. So as we get closer to the deadline, it's easy to say on July 17th, we want 7 to 10 prospects. And then on July 28th, it's we want 4 to 6 prospects. Right. And then on the 31st, it's we'll take whatever we can get.
Yeah, if you get to 3 prospects in the top 15, call me back.
Or even 3 in the top 5, I would do. Harrison, Luciano, and whoever else you want on my list. You don't get Bailey. You don't get Matos. And no Schmidt on Casey.
Yeah, no Schmidt.
Take your pick.
Andy Belmarin Keys. Hey, Andy, thanks for calling Willard and Dibs. And how come you can't fish there anymore? What's the deal with that, Andy? What are you guys doing out there?
Sweating today.
Yeah, no joke.
Like 95.
What's up, Andy?
I got to agree with Mark. How do you justify giving up all of these, however many they ask for 2 months or less? Now, here's my logic to that. And this actually goes to signing him permanently. You talked about the great years Bonds had, and he was incredible. And then Shohei's incredible. Guess what? The Giants never won with Bonds. They got into 1 World Series. The Angels have never won with Shohei. You have to follow tried and true. As you said, Mark, you got to build your system. You got to build it, keep going, and then you can add 1 or 2 guys, but you just don't bankrupt the whole system for 2 months. It's ridiculous. I just no logic. It's totally wrong. I would freak out if they did that.
Yeah, Andy, thanks.
Andy, hang in there, Andy. It's 10 weeks. It's not 2 months.
Yeah, it's 10 weeks.
And you're doing it with the thought that you're going to be able to keep him.
Well,
you're going to show him.
I just don't know that it matters. I mean, how much can you achieve? And he's going to go to free agency anyway. So even if in those 10 weeks, he's like, man, it is great. Well, now I'm in a meeting with the Dodgers.
Sure.
And they're going to make that look great, too. And I've lived in L.A., so I actually know that that's great, too. And
but you don't know what
your mind
that
could be
clubhouse
changed again.
is like. You don't know what that manager is like. And
true.
You could at least, when you're weighing your options, one of the pros would be, I mean, if it turns out to be a con, like, I hate the Giants. Well, then you got burned. But you feel like your manager, your general manager, your president of baseball ops, your clubhouse, everything about your organization would be a pro. So you show him what you got, and then as he's weighing his options in November, December, he can at least say, it was 10 weeks, and, we lost in the NLDS, but darn it, I really like those fellas.
So at his Dodgers press conference, maybe Susan Slusser or John Shea will get down there. Hey, Shohei, through your translator, could you mention why the Giants' pitch fell short? Well, I actually really wanted to go there, but this is a 10-year deal, and their whole system now has been gutted. I really enjoyed my 10 weeks there.
Right.
It was great, but I really want to win. And since we went out in the first round last year, and now, it really appears like there's not, the future's going to take a while. I'm about to be 30. I just don't have time for a rebuild. I want to win right now.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
I'm devastated that they traded Landon Roop, who, by the way, is pitching great in Double-A.
I bet
so
he
he
is.
might be somebody on the go. 174.
Name's Landon Roop. That's a good sports name.
It's a great name.
I'll say this, and I don't want anyone to mistake it for small-time thinking. I do think when you go for it, you also have to weigh what's a disaster. And the Giants, as they stand right now, if they go for him in free agency with all $600 million of their dollars and they don't get him, it's not the end of the world. It's not.
Until he throws on the blue.
No, it's still not the end of the world.
It's the end of the world if you have to face him 12 times a year and he's a Los Angeles Dodger.
No, yeah, I mean,
and it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, you got to face him now. And again,
barely.
But this is the point
play the
Andy just
Angels
made.
twice.
Are people afraid of facing the Angels right now? No, they're lining up around the block. He's one man.
But you're not the Angels. You're talking about the Arizona Cardinals of the MLB.
I understand
it's
that.
an embarrassment of an organization. You
Completely.
know it more than anybody.
I know it
you
very,
covered
very
this
well.
team.
So my point is I want the guy as much as anybody. I really do. But the disaster is if you gut yourself in the effort and then don't get him. That's way bigger disaster than just not getting him.
It's a bigger disaster than you go into free agency and it's pom-poms and he winds up a Dodger. That is the second biggest disaster. But it's a bigger disaster if you gut your farm. You trade a couple of Landon Roops to be named later. It hurts.
I don't think it's going to be a couple. And by the way, that scenario that you laid out, second disaster, is the most likely outcome. It is. You go for him and the Dodgers get him. That's probably the number one answer on the board right now. So, I'd rather if and when that were to happen, I'd rather have Kyle Harrison and Carson Whisenhunt and Patrick Bailey and Luis Matos.
If he's going to be a Dodger, I would
team.
rather not have traded any prospects for 10 weeks.